the resiliency is not limited to small startups. We've seen companies just on Shopify in the last couple of months, Chipotle create basically an online farmers market on Shopify to help some of their farmers, some of their suppliers. We've seen Heinz Ketchup create a direct-to-consumer condiment package in the UK. Lindt Chocolate is now selling direct-to-consumer. And so what is amazing is that the resiliency is actually not limited to just a select few or just the startups. It actually, some big companies are beginning to act really entrepreneurial. And I think it's working. I think there's some great success coming out of this.
Welcome to Season 3 of E-Commerce Fastlane, Episode 100.
Welcome to E-Commerce Fastlane, the podcast show to help you build, launch, grow, and scale a wildly successful e-commerce company. Listen to real conversations with proven practical strategies and success stories. Learn how to generate more traffic, more sales, more profit, and customer lifetime value for your Shopify store. And now, your host and e-commerce entrepreneur, Steve Hutt.
This episode is brought to you by the team at Rewind. You know something? Accidents can happen, and they can have a major financial impact on your business. What happens if you install an app and it messes up your theme? Or you upload a product catalog with errors? Or even worse, a store collaborator deletes product images by mistake? The common myth is that Shopify has a backup that you can use when something goes wrong with your store. Untrue. Myth busted. Shopify has no native backups. So what do? You use Rewind to protect your store with automated backups. Rewind should be the first app you install to protect your store against human error, misbehaving apps, or collaborators gone bad. It's like having your very own magic undo button. The Rewind app is trusted by over 30,000 businesses, from side hustlers to the biggest online retailers like Gatorade or Movement Watches. And best of all, respond to any of their welcome emails and mention the E-Commerce Fastlane podcast, and you'll get your first month of backups absolutely free. Protect your business, get peace of mind with Rewind backups. Download the app today from the Shopify App Store or by visiting rewind.io. Hey there, it's Steve, and welcome back to the E-Commerce Fastlane podcast. Now, if this is your first time listening, this is an e-commerce show where we have honest and transparent conversations about building and thriving with your store powered by Shopify or Shopify Plus. Now, new episodes are available each week with your favorite podcast player through iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and Spotify. Or you can also sign up online at ecommercefastlane.com and be notified when a new show is being released. Now, today's an exciting day. It really is. It's a milestone. It's a time to reflect. It's time to celebrate. Today is my 100th episode of E-Commerce Fastlane. Really has been an incredible 2-year journey of growth, like personally and professionally. You know, most importantly, the impact that the show is having with the knowledge sharing from subject matter experts in commerce, including our agency partners, our marketing platform partners, app partners, all inside the Shopify ecosystem. Joining me today, I could think of no other person who I'd like to chat with. My guest is Harley Finkelstein, who's the Chief Operating Officer of Shopify, the company that has given me and many others the opportunity to develop their life's work by helping independent businesses and entrepreneurs navigate and thrive online and in-store. So hi, Harley. Welcome to E-Commerce Fastlane.
Hey, Steve. So grateful to be here. Congrats on this being your 100th episode. I know that there are so many podcasts lately that have come out and most don't make it to episode 3 or 4. And the fact that you're on your 100th, it shows how much value you're adding. And I think on behalf of all of us in the e-commerce community, the e-commerce family globally, inside and outside of Shopify, I just want to say thank you and offer my congratulations.
Thank you so much, Harley. I much appreciate those kind words. So let's set the stage a little bit for those listening today who don't know your background. Are you able to share a little bit about yourself, your experiences, and then how the last 10 years at Shopify has really helped you become a better version of yourself?
So I was born in Montreal, Canada, and lived there until I was about 13 years old, at which point I moved to South Florida with my family. And after high school, I ended up going to McGill University back in Montreal, mostly because it was cheap. It was McGill's a great school, of course, but it also was very inexpensive. My parents didn't have much money. And so, spending like $1,500 a year on college versus $40,000 a year, which is what a US school would have cost, was sort of a no-brainer. So I found myself back in Montreal in 2001. And that was the sort of around the time of September 11th, around the time of markets kind of falling apart. And It was an interesting time for me. I was 17 years old. I just moved back to Montreal, a city that I absolutely love. But my parents simply were not able to support me at all anymore. In fact, they themselves were barely able to support themselves. And so I ended up starting a little t-shirt business at McGill, making t-shirts for universities. And that was sort of my first real entrepreneurial venture. I toyed around with some smaller businesses when I was a kid, but that was my first time I actually made any real money. And spent most of my undergrad not just getting an economics degree, but really building this little business. It so happened that a mentor of mine had convinced me probably about halfway through my undergrad to consider going to law school to become a better entrepreneur. This particular mentor happened to be teaching at the University of Ottawa, which is the capital of Canada. And he encouraged me to apply there because, well, frankly, he'd be my professor. And so I decided I'd take the LSATs and apply to law school, applied to one school, which was in Ottawa, got in, and ended up moving to Ottawa in 2005. And the interesting part of moving to Ottawa was I didn't have any friends or family there at all. I didn't know anyone other than this one particular mentor. But when I arrived, like I always had done, I sort of started asking around, where are the entrepreneurs hanging out? Because entrepreneurs have been my tribe, my community since I was a kid. Ended up meeting a group of entrepreneurs and started hanging out with them. And one of those entrepreneurs was Toby, who's our CEO and our founder of Shopify. It was a serendipitous time for me to meet Toby because one, I needed some friends and he became a friend. But also, my t-shirt business that I had in undergrad and university was not going to translate well into law school, mostly because law school requires attendance and college undergrad does not. Right. So I decided that if I wanted to continue to be able to pay my tuition and afford rent, but also help my family, I needed to transition my business from a wholesale business selling t-shirts to universities to really having a retail business that was virtual, that operated concurrently while I was in classes. And as I heard Toby make the transition from snowboards into software, I became intrigued by whether or not I could be an early adopter of Shopify and I can take my t-shirt business and move it online. And ended up doing that and became one of the first stores on Shopify around 2006. And spent the next couple of years finishing law school and sort of building up this online store. It was called Smoofer. After I finished law school, went to Toronto to practice law for 10 months. Hated it. Thought it was like the worst thing in the world. And in 2009, I called Toby and asked him if he would have me, if I can join him and a handful of other engineers and be the non-engineer in the group and help them commercialize and build the business. And the rest is history.
Well, thanks a lot for sharing some of that context. I kind of knew it from some internal dialogues that we've had in the past, but it's nice to share externally some of these life lessons and some of these learnings. So let's do a little tiny pivot over to the global pandemic and, the stay-at-home orders, over the past 3 months or so. In your vantage point, like how is consumer spending being affected by traditional brick and mortar retailers and then these digitally native brands that are selling exclusively online? I just love to hear what your insights are.
Well, you've heard me say this a couple times now, maybe dozens of times now, but it seems like the year 2030, from a retail perspective, has been pulled into the year 2020. Mm-hmm. And there's a couple data points which demonstrate that. The most important and impactful one is that it took about 8 to 10 years to go from about 5% e-commerce of total retail to about 15%. And it's taken about 3 months to go from 15% to like 25%. Which is a dramatic increase. I mean, we've seen the same amount of growth in the last 3 months as we have in the last, let's call it 8 years. And this would have happened eventually anyway. It's the year 2030, that would have been the case, but it's happened a lot more rapidly. And what's emerged is sort of what I would sort of refer to as a tale of two retail worlds. On one hand, you have these resistant retailers that simply did not have it in their DNA to quickly pivot and to survive COVID. And a lot of them have not. You've seen a lot of big companies go out of business, some iconic brands, whether it's the J. Crews of the world or Barney's or Neiman Marcus. I mean, these are iconic companies, Forever 21, that just didn't make it. And it was because, in my view, they were resistant to change and they did not have any sort of entrepreneurial spirit or abilities in their culture in which to make these changes rapidly. And so they were resistant and some of them did not make it. On the other hand, you have these resilient retailers, these entrepreneurs, these brands who looked at what was happening mid-March and said, we have to make some deep changes. We have to change the way we do business. We have to change the way we connect with our consumers. And for those that have made that change, frankly, it's been great for them. Now, that's obviously on the supply side of it. on the demand side, what you've also seen is you've seen consumers voting with their wallets in a way that we've never seen before to support small businesses, to support independent retailers, to support local entrepreneurs in their cities, in their towns, in their areas, wherever they live. I think the combination of having resilient retailers and brands that have just pivoted and figured out what they have to do to survive and thrive in this new world, and consumers saying we prefer to buy direct, has resulted in what I think is some of the most important, impactful, and interesting times in retail of the last couple hundred years. And I know that's a big statement, but I'm certainly seeing it. And it's interesting. Whenever I talk about this, I think folks immediately think I'm talking about sort of the kitchen table entrepreneurs, people that are, have 2, 3, 4 employees and they're just getting started and they're just building their business. But actually, the resiliency is not limited to small startups. We've seen companies just on Shopify in the last couple of months, Chipotle create basically an online farmers market on Shopify to help some of their farmers, some of their suppliers. We've seen Heinz Ketchup create a direct-to-consumer condiment package in the UK. Lindt Chocolate is now selling direct-to-consumer. And so what is amazing is that the resiliency is actually not limited to just a select few or just the startups. It actually, some big companies are beginning to act really entrepreneurial. And I think it's working. I think there's some great success coming out of this.
Yeah, and also hear a lot of things you talk about retail operating system of what Shopify actually is. So let's dig in a little bit into that because I think it's really, really interesting. Maybe some of the specific tactics around how you believe brick and mortar retailers today, how should they navigate the current retail environment?
I think from our perspective at Shopify, we think that our responsibility to the 1 million and more stores that use us has expanded. When someone there says, hey, I'm going to work, what they really mean is they're opening up their Shopify admin. And that's where they're doing their work. Navigating the admin, fulfilling orders, adding new products, shipping out products, adding new marketing tools, starting new campaigns, launching new campaigns. That's all being done directly from Shopify. And that's a wonderful thing for us to be the core of their work.
Right.
That is a wonderful position for us to be. But with that comes great responsibility. And so I think if you were to ask most people who don't know Shopify, who don't use Shopify, what we do, I think most people would say, well, we're an e-commerce provider. And that's true. That's what we're best known for. One of certainly the largest players, if not the largest player in the e-commerce world. But those that use us realize that the relationship that we have with these merchants it's just different. And what we've tried to do, and I think in many cases quite successfully over the last couple of years, is we've tried to figure out what else can we do to make entrepreneurs and small businesses' lives better? What else can we do to further level the playing field so that small businesses can compete with the largest retailers? What can we do to help companies that are at scale, whether it's the Gymsharks of the world or the Fashion Novas of the world or the Allbirds of the world, stores that started on Shopify but have now grown to be category leaders? What more can we do to help them? And what we started doing was we started adding well beyond just e-commerce functionality. We added physical retail functionality, point of sale. We've added a multi-channel commerce capability so you can sell on Facebook or Walmart.com or Amazon or Pinterest or Instagram or anywhere you want. And then beyond that, we've also said, well, Shopify is not a retailer. But if you were to pretend for just a moment that we are a single retailer, you would realize that in the US alone, we would be the second largest online retailer in the country. If we were an actual retailer where we would keep those economies of scale for ourselves, our opportunity as a platform is we can simply distribute those economies of scale to anyone that uses us. What I mean by that is by using Shopify today, you immediately will get payment rates that traditionally small business couldn't get on their own. You immediately will get access to capital, actual money to spend on inventory and marketing that you couldn't get otherwise on your own. You get access to fulfillment and shipping. You get access to fraud protection services. We've began to sort of fill in, more recently with Shopify Balance, we've began to sort of fill in the gaps of what every small business may need. And we think we can do a better job for them than they could get on their own. And we can give those economies of scale out there and again, level that playing field. And I think what all that amounts to is the world's first retail operating system. And although no one searches for that per se, you kind of know it when you see it. And I think that's what makes our current offering, it's always evolving, but our current offering really, really compelling as a place not only to start your new business, but also a place to run your business when you're at scale.
Yeah, that's fantastic advice for these brick and mortar retailers. And it's just exciting, some of the innovation that Shopify is doing. And actually, it was pre-COVID that a lot of these things were actually in the works, but it just made it very timely that we were able to push a lot of these updates and getting feedback directly from our merchants about what sort of things they needed. Buy online and pick up in store through a POS, or curbside pickup, or connections to local delivery companies, or even right from within the admin. It's really exciting, and just how easy it is for multi-channel with, as you said, Facebook and Instagram and marketplaces. And it's so interesting. Just shopping local is another major topic that really comes up quite a bit now. People are really looking to invest their dollars more locally. And I think that's really exciting.
That's right. And that is quite amazing. I agree with that. I mean, it feels like a return to caring deeply about our local businesses. I think all of us are concerned that on the other side of COVID, will our local businesses still exist? Will the local flower shop still be there? Will the local barber shop still be there? Will the local cafe still be there? We want these things to exist because those are the things that make our communities interesting. That's what gives them character. And one of the things I'm probably most proud of being at Shopify for over a decade now is what happened in those first couple of days after COVID hit. And what happened was we said to the company, you remember this, I'm sure, we said, throw out your plans. The only thing that matters right now is to help small businesses survive and potentially thrive. That's all that matters. And so whether it's doing 90-day free trials instead of 14 days, whether it's adding gift cards so that service-based businesses can use us at least temporarily, whether it's things like adding local pickup or in-store pickup or local delivery, whether it was pushing out Shopify email as fast as we could, or the new Shopify point of sale. We really did, as a company, pivot to help small businesses in a way that it was inspiring watching the company come together. I'm really proud of how we showed up there, and I think a lot of businesses will exist because we refocused and recalibrated what's important.
Yeah, and I follow quite a few people and quite a my own brands that I manage, and I've gotten significant feedback on just the speed at which Shopify has executed on helping, and they really were the life raft, so to speak, for a lot of brands. I mean, one case study that I have is a brand that had 38 retail locations. They were restaurants in the US, and obviously they were all closed. They came to me and said, Steve, like, what can we do? And I said, well, one option could be, have you thought about making packs of food, or make it a theme night? It could be burgers, it could be taco night or pizza night, whatever it is. And can you package that up together into the necessary food items that you need, sell it as a package on Shopify, and have a curbside pickup for that sort of thing? And their business massively blew up just because we offered that level of service and just the functionality from within the POS and live on their website.
And that's a great example of another resilient retailer. One of my best friends is a guy named Stephen Bechta, who's a great Canadian restaurateur. He's some of the most iconic restaurants in the country. Within a week of COVID hitting, he obviously had to shut down his restaurants. He turned his understanding of wine, his understanding of hospitality, into one of those incredible wine boutiques curated by Bechta, whereby anyone can go and buy a box of different price boxes, but they can buy a case of wine, and you fill out a quick form. You tell him the types of wine you like, your tastes, your preferences, and then he curates a box of wine. And that's a brand new business for him now that didn't exist pre-COVID, and that will likely continue indefinitely, even on the other side of COVID. That's what I mean by some folks have really thrived through this. And I don't mean to make light of a really terrible situation. And frankly, the global pandemic is a terrible situation, but it is inspiring to see these glimmers of hope from entrepreneurs that simply are not willing to shut down. They're not willing to give up. They're not willing to fail. They really are just trying to be resilient and create more value. That I think is wonderful.
One thing I've noticed this podcast is I tend to interview people in our app ecosystem, marketing platforms, agency partners and whatnot. And every year we typically go to an in-person event called Unite. And this year it was repositioned as Reunite. Are you able to give some highlights, first of all, what Unite or Reunite actually is, and then are able to maybe dig into a couple of the most impactful announcements?
Yeah, so I think we've been doing Unite, which is our partner conference, for about 4 years, I want to say, something like that, 4, maybe 5 years, as Shopify's resident power extrovert. It's one of my most enjoyable weeks of the year because I get to connect with partners and friends in the Shopify family, the ecosystem that I don't often get to see. And there's a ton of hugging. There's a ton of smiles. There's a ton of fist bumps and high fives. And it's a wonderful opportunity to connect with our partners. And as anyone who knows me or knows Shopify knows, our partner ecosystem is one of the most important parts of Shopify.
Right.
It's one of the things I've spent a majority of my time at Shopify building and developing, and it's something that means a lot to me. This year, obviously, we couldn't do Unite because we couldn't get together in person. But in the theme of pivot and the theme of resilience, we decided we would create something different. And instead of doing Unite, we would do Reunite and invite not just partners, but also merchants in. And it would be a virtual event. And it was amazing. We had, I think it was about an hour and a half worth of talks from different product leaders and people building great tools for merchants in Shopify. We had, I think it was over 100,000 people tuned into it, which was super cool. We usually get about 1,500 people in attendance. So having 100,000 people there was just awesome. And we got a chance to announce really amazing things. For example, new areas and new expansion of Shopify Capital to new geographies like Canada and the UK. Installments, which is coming soon to Shopify Payments. Shopify Balance, which will give merchants access to financial products to start, run, and grow their businesses and help them with cash flow management. The Shopify card and rewards. And so much came out of that. And that's just on the product side. Also, on the education side, we talked about where Shopify Compass is going, some of the tools and some of the ways and workshops that we can help merchants and partners become more successful. We talked a bit about what is happening with some new APIs and new ways that partners and developers can build new products and functionality for Shopify. And it was awesome. It was so much fun to do that. It was such a great way to connect. And was it the same as Unite? No, it was different, but equally awesome in its own way. One day I hope to go back to an in-person event because I think that's always fun. But Reunite was really great. We got it set up in a matter, I think, a week or so. And the feedback that I got from partners was really great. So I'm happy about that.
And I got the exact same feedback too from a lot of the partners because I've interviewed a lot of them and they were disappointed when they bought their tickets originally, hoping to go. They knew how quickly it sold out every year, but then they were excited that we're able to put on a virtual event and excited that it was open to the full public, not just partner ecosystem, but even entrepreneurs. And that was fantastic. So let's dig into another term, this whole new normal. I even see some wording now, people can call it the next normal. It's been widely shared in media for this first half of the year. And from your vantage points, I think it's kind of unique. Are you able to share how you believe retail and commerce are changing? I'm just curious, a tactic or two or a strategy or two, what can brands do today so they could remain more relevant and more competitive?
Well, look, we are certainly in a new normal. Some things may go back slightly to the previous way that they operated, but most things will not. And the first thing I think that's super important to realize is that, and this is sort of why I often lead these conversations with talking about the year 2030, because if you can forecast or you can foreshadow what would have been the world in 2030 and pull it back today, I think it'll be quite valuable. Right. One thing that is certain is this idea of multi-channel or omni-channel or pick your buzzword. There are still way too many brands that view that as a strategy. Right. That is not a strategy. The strategy is that if you are a brand that's going to be successful in the future, you need to sell your product in the way that your consumer wants to buy the product. Full stop. Multi-channel is a tactic that allows you or enables you to sell products anywhere or more places so that the consumers that you are attracting find the buying experience customized for their particular preferences. And that is a big difference than what it was even 10 years ago. 10 years ago, the retailer dictated to the consumer how to buy. We're open Saturday morning at 9 a.m. If you want this, line up right now. We're going to close on Sundays at 4 p.m. So if you want something, be there before that. If you want this product, you have to come in store. If you want it online, you have to buy it online. That has been a dramatic change, which is that now consumers are dictating to the retailer how they want to purchase. So one is, I think, omni-channel. I think that's fairly well known at this point. Right. The second thing is the idea of direct-to-consumer being a fad, I think, is over. Direct-to-consumer is the best way to purchase products in almost every category. There are very few categories where intermediation makes sense. If you're buying paper towel or you're buying shampoo and it's fairly generic, it may be easier to go and buy all your stuff at one particular retailer. But generally, I think that consumers like the idea of direct-to-consumer because, one, the buying experience is better. The people that make the products are usually the ones that know how to sell the products the best. Not always, but in most cases. Second, the people making the products get to keep 100% of the profit margin. And I think we as consumers want to support that. We want to support independent brands, independent stores. And third, I think that when you are buying something, you are voting with your wallet that you want that thing to exist in the world, that you want the people behind that product to exist in the world. And so I think this new normal or next normal, whatever you want to call it, we're going to see far more direct to consumer. I think we're going to drop direct to consumer as a term. It's going to be like saying color TV. You don't say color TV, you just say TV. I think every brand will be direct to consumer brand. They may also sell through intermediaries as a way to expose their products to a new audience, which is why some of these channels can be very effective. But I think that's kind of where we're going. And I also think that right now, at least, because we can't spend our money on experiences like travel and vacations, consumers are looking for cool stuff that's going to make their life better. I'm drinking my matcha tea right now. I drink matcha every day. I want a great matcha tea shaker. And right now, I will spend a little bit more money on my matcha tea shaker because it's important to me. It's a big part of my life. Whereas 8 months ago, I would have been like, it doesn't really matter to me. I'm traveling a lot. I'm in airports a lot. I'm on the road a lot. I'll just grab whatever I can. But because I'm here in my home office every single day, day in and day out, things like that have more meaning to me. And I think it's a wonderful opportunity for brands and products that are really thinking dramatically different around how can they create value for the consumer. And honestly, for retailers that are not adding value, that believe their reason that they exist is because they have distribution, they have a physical store, unfortunately, that's just not going to work anymore. Consumers are demanding that if they're going to give you their hard-earned money, you need to add value to their life.
Yeah, that's great advice. So one thing I was thinking about, I think you know this story quite well, and I think it would be great to hear it from your context, but the whole Gymshark story, the fact that they made a very interesting pivot from Gymshark to Homeshark in the middle of the pandemic. And I had a lot of strategies, a lot of tactics that I shared with the brands that I manage. Even through the merchant success team, we had lots of documents and things and a lot of shareable content that we're getting out into our merchants' ecosystem saying, listen, there's opportunity here. And so now we're looking at some of the leaders in the marketplace and what they have done to grow and build a community. Are able to share with listeners today why they renamed their social channels from Gymshark to Homeshark and what that actually did to bring value to their community?
Yeah, I mean, I've been a loving observer of the Gymshark story since almost day one. Ben Francis and I have been friends for many years now. He built a bigger business a couple of years ago, which was our Shopify Plus competition. And so I spent a lot of time with him and his team. Simply put, the reason that they changed their online channels to Homeshark from Gymshark was because they understand their consumer. They have deep empathy for the people that are purchasing their products. They understand that most people that were buying Gymshark clothing and apparel were buying it and then wearing it to the gym. And COVID hit and gyms shut down. And so they had two choices. They could have lamented the fact that gyms were closing down and that's where people were wearing their products on sort of the resistant entrepreneurial side. Or because Ben and his team are phenomenal and they're thoughtful and they have deep empathy, they're like, no, our people, our consumers are going to continue working out. They're just going to work out at home. And so we need a brand that better reflects the current realities of what is happening. And the current realities is that we all turned our dens, our kitchens, in my case, my daughter's bedroom, at least temporarily, into a gym. I do that when she's awake, not when she's sleeping, of course. But we all kind of pivoted quickly. And so they're like, well, we have to reflect what our consumers are actually doing. Right. And they did it within a matter of days. And I think that, to me, it epitomizes what I mean by that resiliency. They could have done a strategy session. They could have hired consultants. They could have done a bunch of decks and a bunch of meetings and brainstorming sessions. Instead, they said, look, here's what our people are doing. Here's what the people that care about Gymshark are doing. Let's make sure that we pivot our business, pivot our narrative, pivot the way we speak to our consumers in a way that makes sense given this new reality. Because otherwise, it would be completely tone deaf to continuously talk about gym experience when every gym is closed.
Right.
And I think those are the companies that I look to for inspiration. And it's not a surprise to me that those companies that have that deep empathy for the consumer tend to also be the companies that survive and thrive and are the most successful in their category.
So Harley, we are nearing the end of the show for today, but are you able to share some closing comments or any takeaways that you would like to leave with our listeners today?
I know most people that are listening tend to be those that are entrepreneurs and people that are in sort of the e-commerce world. But one thing that I'm beginning to see that I'd like to share that it's been really exciting for me is I've been self-identifying as an entrepreneur since I was a kid. The story I didn't tell was, and that I think you know, is that when I was 13 years old, I just wanted to be a DJ. I didn't know how to be a DJ. No one would hire me. And so I started my own DJ company and hired myself. I don't really talk about that story because the DJ company was not that successful. But when I said to my friends and my family, hey, I want to be an entrepreneur, I want to start this business, it certainly was not well respected. It certainly wasn't well known. It was kind of a weird thing. One of the things that I believe that is happening right now is more and more people are considering their own version of entrepreneurship. More people right now are considering commercializing their hobbies and starting a business. More people now are thinking about, for those that have been unfortunately laid off, how they can take something that they love, that they're passionate about, and build a business around it. More people now that may have worked at a gym, back to Gymshark story, are now thinking about how they can create content and create a set of videos to help people working out at home to do a better job of that. It feels like more and more people now are trying their hand on entrepreneurship. And I think a world with more entrepreneurs, a world with more independent businesses is just a much, much better world. And I'm inspired to hear stories from folks all over the world. Both are working with Shopify, but even people that are just sending me a note on social media saying, hey, just so you know, I decided to start a little business. I make a delicious barbecue sauce at home for my family, and I decided to create a little store. And now I'm selling that barbecue sauce around the world. That is such a wonderful thing. If a byproduct or a positive externality that comes out of COVID is that we turn more people into entrepreneurs, I think that is just that's a wonderful thing. That's something that I'm very optimistic about right now. And I think the world needs more entrepreneurs.
Absolutely. Well, as you know, Shopify's mission really is to make commerce better for everyone. It's clear both you, the executive team, our incredibly dedicated partner ecosystem, all Shopify, these are the employees inside Shopify, really are in tight alignment with the desire to educate and find efficiencies through technology, grow revenue, assist in building lifetime customer loyalty for all entrepreneurs around the world. I just wanted to thank you, Harley, number one, for taking time today, I guess, to acknowledge this 100th episode, sharing some knowledge, your vision, essentially giving back to the Shopify ecosystem. I really appreciate it. It truly is an exciting time that I know we are making the difference for the lives of entrepreneurs and all of these brands around the world.
Oh, thanks, Steve. Well, thanks for inviting me on the show. And for all of you that are listening, that are part of the Shopify family, that are part of the Rebel Alliance, those of you that are helping us arm the rebels, thank you for everything. Thank you for your loyalty. Thank you for your passion. Thank you for propping up entrepreneurs everywhere. And to you, Steve, thank you for doing this show. And congrats on the 100th episode, incredible milestone. And I'd love to record again and celebrate your 1 millionth download if you're up for it.
All right, that's a deal. Thank you so much, Harley. Have yourself an awesome day.
Thanks, Steve.
This episode is brought to you by the team at Rewind. If you're a Shopify partner, join leading agencies like The Tap Room, Milk Bottle Labs, BVA, and more in the Rewind Agency Partner Program. You can earn up to $1,000 for recommending Rewind to your clients. And as I mentioned at the top of the show, if you're a merchant, feel confident and enjoy peace of mind that your store is always safe with automatic backups by Rewind. Learn more by looking up Rewind in the Shopify App Store or by visiting rewind.io. And make sure you mention E-commerce Fastlane Podcast and you'll get your first month absolutely free. Well, that's it for today's episode. I'd like to thank you, a loyal listener of E-commerce Fastlane. It's my hope that this podcast is offering you a ton of value through growth strategies, tactics, and exclusive insider tips on the best Shopify apps and marketing platforms, all with my personal goal to help you build, launch, grow, and scale with Shopify. Thanks for investing some time today and listening to the show. I'm so proud and excited that you have a growth mindset and are a constant learner. I truly appreciate you and your entrepreneurial journey. Enjoy the rest of the week and keep thriving with Shopify.